Saurav Bhatia, head of fixed income at DSP Mutual Fund, a fixed income strategist and head who's now coming to talk to us about the problems and issues in the fixed income market, especially after the blowout of the Franklin Templeton debt funds. And I'm sure he'll be a very interesting speaker, and all of us would love to listen to him. How are you, Mr. Bhatia? So I believe you want to talk about the topic of the day is, well, debt cause pain or reward investors, the fixed income strategy in the post-COVID environment. Please go ahead, sir.
Sure. Before I begin with what all is happening from the recent over the last few days from a bond market perspective, I'll just put it from into three layers in context of there's a bigger picture and India in times of this crisis, and how and where the recent measures by the policymakers is helping in times like this. To begin with, and which is in continuation what Shiv was also mentioning. From a financial market perspective, it plays out, or we identify that in four stages: risk on, risk off, flight to safety, and flight to liquidity.
Yeah.
I repeat: risk on, risk off, flight to safety, and flight to liquidity. Typically, when we look from an asset class perspective, in a risk on mode, commodities and equities outperform. In a risk off mode, the bonds outperform. In flight to safety, the gold will outperform. And when we are in flight to liquidity mode, only and only the reserve currency or the US dollar outperforms. These are cycles. Any external trigger can also lead us into any of these stages. Presently, we are in this flight to liquidity mode, wherein only one asset class, which is US dollar, is outperforming, and this is largely because of the tendency to hoard the reserve currency, considering the extent of uncertainty which lies ahead.
Right.
We often ascribe this phase of flight to liquidity as the most commonly used term becomes the crisis. And hence, largely when we are in flight to liquidity mode, what we ascribe the financial market or how we relate is we are in the phase of crisis. And in this phase, typically the developing markets, the gap largely gets bridged from a global perspective. India, in times of this crisis, I think we are a blessing in disguise, and India is one of the best positioned in the current, going into this current crisis to what we have been in the past. I say so because, one, compared to 2008 and 2013, when the tailwind of growth was relatively strong getting into the crisis, there was a fair bit of refinance risk and the growth momentum, which had to be abruptly stopped.
Right.
Going into 2020 or this crisis, the growth momentum has been relatively slower, and hence the extent of refinance risk or extent of legacy problems would be relatively lesser to tackle, and it will be more to do with incremental problems. Second, as the tailwind was relatively slower for growth, we don't have so much of an external debt, and the external situation is, from an India standpoint, is far better.
Right.
This is reflected largely in the currency as an EM currency to what we have seen on a relative basis, what's happening with other EM currencies. So from a YTD perspective, we have fared much better in context of volatility compared to what has happened with other EM currencies. Through this phase of slowdown over the last 15-18 months, we haven't used much of an ammunition, be it on the fiscal side or the forex reserve side. This bodes well in these times when a fair bit of ammunition is still in reserve for us to be used as and when we start using it up in a full manner. So this is both on the fiscal side as well as on the monetary side. Last but not the least, important to note that the political stability it's an important factor for an EM. It's fairly strong, and as we have just come out of political elections and a political mandate, we have a fair bit of time, or to use a piecemeal approach to get the economy reviving.
Right.
Presently, as we stand, we are on a very steep slope, and no matter how strong your vehicle is, the best what you can do is ensure to use the brakes appropriately so that you don't crash land. And that's what I think the regulators and the policymakers are doing by using these measures in a more piecemeal way. Because again, if you look back at the previous crisis, say 2001, 2008, and 2013,
Right.
largely accidents and triggered by a particular event. In this phase, we are still in the midst of this crisis, and hence a piecemeal approach would be far better as we get and come out with all guns blazing when we get closer to the end of this
Yep.
pandemic. In this piecemeal measures, what we have seen over the last 1.5 months from from policymakers, be it government as well as RBI, is one, what is changed through this is they're finally allowed an avenue for this liquidity to flow in. Outside of the previous 1 week volatility, if you look back at the second fortnight of March, where even the money market rates and the corporate bond rates also were fairly volatile, RBI advanced the monetary policy from April first week to last week of March, came up with measures to address a dislocation in money market as well as corporate market curve through TLTRO, CRR cut, and the steep cut in the repo rate.
Right.
So now with this, the liquidity, which was largely moving between RBI and the banks, has found one avenue, courtesy the targeted LTRO. One thing which often gets discussed is, this liquidity is not flown into the lower rated bonds or credit assets. I think so far the intent what the policymakers have given is they want to transfer or they want to address the extent of illiquidity risk from one fraternity to another, and not the credit risk. And hence, largely what we see is the measures provided by RBI is to enable banks with liquidity to buy higher rated bonds and not capital to buy much lower rated credits. So what is not changed with these measures is one, of course, a similar enabler to for a credit risk or a credit oriented assets, and second is what is not changed is corporate bonds got their medicine, the high rated corporate bonds. GSEC are yet to get their medicine for addressing the demand supply, and if corporate bonds have got their demand supply largely addressed on the AAA and the PSU segment via the TLTRO, we do expect the next or the forthcoming changes from a measures perspective to address the government security markets or the yields on the government security market to respond to liquidity and repo rates. This can, and hence what can potentially change is a calendar of OMO capping the extent of money which goes into reverse repo, the ATM for banks, and last but not the least, monetizing of the fiscal deficit. And a combination or any of these measures would lead to compressing the spread between the repo rate and the GSEC. Finally, moving on to outlook on rates and from a fixed income perspective, it's fairly easy to give an outlook on rates in this scenario when growth is racing to the bottom, and when growth outlook is fairly bleak, inflation doesn't pose much of a risk. Government is fairly responsive in putting up the quantum of fiscal stimulus to turn the tide, and hence outlook on interest rates will remain benign.
Correct.
The risk obviously comes from an unknown on the extent of fiscal stimulus and how the demand supply will get addressed. An important narrative or a notion which needs to get addressed here is on the fiscal side. When we are in this flight to liquidity mode, the attempt of the fiscal stimulus and a fiscal push is to ensure that the economy doesn't crash land. And unlike in any other stages, risk on or risk off, wherein a fiscal push by the government to fast track growth is complemented by tightening of policy rates and liquidity by central bank. In this phase, in flight to liquidity mode, typically the central bank will support the fiscal push by a lot of measures, which includes buying of bonds by themselves. And hence, we expect the first round of fiscal measures will be ably supported by RBI through different means, which I mentioned earlier. So we could see yield first responding to high liquidity and the repo rate cuts before and keeping a tab on the liquidity situation or the end as we get closer to the end of the pandemic. Will this fiscal stimulus see the reversal of rate cycle? We are fairly distant from that, and hence first we expect yields to come off before we see the impact of fiscal stimulus seeing the reversal side. Lastly, what from an investor perspective in fixed income, to meet your expectation in fixed income, what we prescribe is tick the 4 boxes, which in the long run help to meet your expectations. These 4 boxes include liquidity, predictability, returns, and lower volatility. I repeat, liquidity, predictability, returns, and lower volatility. And to meet these, tick these 4 boxes, apportion your investments between roll down and open-ended funds, wherein the roll down can take care of liquidity, predictability, and lower volatility. And the open-ended can be optimized to generate returns.
Right.
I'll stop here and dwell more on each of these things through any of your questions. What we can take up from.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Saurabh. Let me just start with some questions that have come to us from viewers and people who have logged onto the show. Obviously, Franklin Templeton and the episode is top of everybody's minds. So here's a question from Mr. Sudeep Tandon, who wants to know, in the light of the Franklin episode, how safe are mutual funds? I suspect that, well, this is a question that is on everybody's minds, but the credit risk funds, we need to differentiate between credit risk funds and the other funds in the debt mutual fund category. But everybody's going to be focused on the fact that, okay, now this has happened, how safe are debt mutual funds, or how safe are investment in debt schemes of mutual funds? So how do you, I mean, this is going to be an issue that is going to be, you guys are going to grapple with it. So how do you answer this?
First point, in context to what has happened very recently or over the last 1 week, one important tenet of a fixed income mutual fund has been questioned or has been tested, wherein we say, often the money which is brought into mutual fund, one of the arguments which is put in is, you have fair amount of liquidity or daily liquidity for this asset class called debt fixed income for an open-ended fund. So that question obviously comes out because a liquidity in the mutual fund industry has been tested, but as we say, opinion should not form conclusions, and hence we should not paint this from a larger industry perspective. If we see through this week, since the last Thursday, Friday, the liquidity requirements for funds across the industry have been met. So we shouldn't jump in to conclude that this is a problem to stay here permanently. From a debt investments and a debt mutual fund perspective, the liquidity for a larger portion of the funds, much larger portion of the markets, is still available. The central bank and the policymakers have intervened. Both the regulators, SEBI as well as the RBI, have intervened to ensure that the illiquidity risk in the market gets receded quickly. So we had seen some measures coming in earlier this week as well. And what we have also noticed is since the beginning of this week, the pace of redemptions have been largely receding. So the big test for, I don't think mutual fund, but I think also equally for the investors or the larger market, was how will the industry meet the first round of redemptions or the liquidity requirements. And I think that big hurdle is already crossed or is already passed through. So,
so just to understand this here, the redemption pressure you are seeing across the industry is largely in credit risk, or is it in other categories of debt funds as well?
Precisely, and that's what I was coming to.
Yeah,
there are two reasons for redemptions, which partly can be a credit risk, or who want to de-risk themselves from credit risk. And other important to note is there is a genuine demand for liquidity on the ground. A lot of previous speakers since morning mentioned that the extent of requirement of liquidity is very difficult to predict in these times.
Right.
We head into a last week typically there is a requirement for salary payments and other means, and hence it should not be construed that a lot of redemptions which have happened for these requirements is a part of problem of whatever has happened last week. Credit risk redemptions, yes, in context to the extent of noise and the fear of illiquidity, but a larger part of redemptions would also have gone out for the need of payments for
business operational reasons.
For the business operation regions, and it is not only for mutual funds, and it is also for corporates. Today, it would be a little difficult for them to predict the extent of requirement of liquidity. And hence, there is a fair bit of, you'll always err on more conservative side to load up more on the liquidity, as well as you're going into a phase where you don't know how much of this lockdowns can get extended, because May 3rd is an important date. And if this gets extended, even if in certain part of countries, the requirement for liquidity can also change in those lines.
Right. No, absolutely. So Mr. Biswajit Samra has a question about whether it's a good time to start SIPs in debt funds now. What would you do?
If your overall portfolio is a tree, the debt funds do a job of the shade, and equity does the job of fruits and flowers. Your fruits and flowers, which is equity, which is a wealth creator, is a seasonal product. It needs, I mean, it peaks out in certain season, it gives you a wealth creation, it takes a little bit more time. And all you need to ensure is your shade is intact as you wait for your fruits and flowers to blossom. For fixed income perspective, either through if you're trying to diversify the risk or extend out your risk and you're seeking SIP for that purpose, answer may be no. But if you have monies which you want to allocate on every month basis your inflows, yes. And when you are allocating investments into fixed income, like I said, there are three drivers for generating returns: duration, credit, and the conventional short-term fund. Duration and credit are more seasonal products. 2 years back, none of us were talking of duration, because for duration to outperform, you need lower growth momentum and lower government borrowing. These two things are not permanent in nature. So
Right.
utilize this when you see lower government borrowing and lower growth outlook. Similar way, for credit to outperform, you need positive growth momentum and lower cost of money. Again, you cannot have positive growth momentum and lower cost of money perpetually, and hence credit also
Right.
becomes a seasonal product.
Yeah.
So to do your SIPs or your fixed income exposures, apportion between roll down funds and open-ended. And open-ended is a fill at the blank. You can choose anything under the sun. It can be credit or duration, and that should be a good way to approach fixed income.
Okay. Okay. And what is the prospect for debt mutual funds, you think, in the next few years? Mr. Dilip Das from Mumbai wants to know. The prospect for debt mutual funds?
Well, the debt mutual funds, as I said, the debt category in itself is supposed to give you shade from an overall portfolio allocation perspective, and the prospect of debt mutual fund has continued to remain as a return generating asset class. Equity is a wealth creating asset class, and as a return generator asset class, debt mutual funds will continue to do what they've been doing over the last 2 decades.
Okay, okay. Just one final point, Mr. Bhatia, that is regarding the liquidity facility that has been made available to the mutual funds by RBI. How dire is the need, and do you think that liquidity will now finally flow through to mutual funds, because banks have to go and borrow in that window and then lend to the mutual funds, and there are some issues about whether enough collateral is available, enough top-rated papers are available with the debt mutual funds, and whether banks will actually go ahead and do it. What is your perception? What is your view on that?
Well, from a liquidity standpoint, the measures, which is TLTRO plus the recent measures which RBI announced this week, should be good enough for mutual fund industry to meet liquidity requirements. Important to note, the liquidity requirement from the mutual fund industry is two-pronged. One, largely from the credit risk segment, and the other segment, which is substantially large, is the conventional or the AAA PSU and the AAA corporate segment. This conventionally very large segment is operating largely BAU. The yields on these bonds haven't moved much even this week and as early as Monday also. So I don't see a reason why, as the market is not dislocated, there is a need to access that incremental amount of liquidity. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the redemptions or the pace of redemptions have receded considerably through this short week of 4 days, and this gives a fair bit of cushion. This gives a fair bit of cushion even for mutual funds as well as for the investors, that there is a fair bit of liquidity available in the mutual fund industry to meet the requirements of redemptions. And thanks to regulators, we do see this risk abating as we get into the next week.
Okay. One final point: do you see the volatility in the AA papers or the second-tier companies, the non-AAA and the non-PSU? How much is that worrying now? Is that also likely to recede, or is that going to stay with us for some more time? Especially AA papers of NBFC, the AA papers of not so well-performing companies. What is the picture there?
Well, again, the basic tenet: for credit to turn good, you need positive growth momentum and lower cost of money.
Right.
And this
that's not going to happen now immediately.
Yes, and we know that we have only one of the two things working. We have lower cost of money, but the growth momentum is still absent. The liquidity profile for these AA or lower than AA rated bonds is relatively lower, and that doesn't mean there is no market for that.
Right. Okay.
There is a market for that. But the yields or the bid-ask spreads are relatively wider. Every price largely reflects the value of that particular bond, and be it NBFCs or be it for lower rated corporates, it's not. There are two ways to look at it. Is it largely the NBFC a reflection of what is happening in the industry and in the economy, or is it confined to that one particular name in itself? If it is confined to a particular credit in itself, it becomes a little bit of a it will have a differentiated pricing. But if it's largely a part of that economy, the problem is largely reflective of economy. We could see the yields relatively elevated, which for the risk takers becomes an opportunity. But we don't see that as a broad-based thing for the entire category of NBFC or corporates in itself. And if I can make a point on this, which also nudges the first question of yours, is there are three risks which come from a mutual fund or a debt fund perspective, especially from a credit side. One is a liquidity risk. Second is a markdown risk if a credit has to blow up. And third is the extent of spike in yields which can happen because of the need to hold an additional amount of liquidity for the fund. The liquidity risk, which came up in the last week, the large part of the liquidity risk cannot be attributed to the entire industry, and that liquidity risk through this week has seen a fair bit of reduction. This implies that the first big risk of, if I need money, will I be able to redeem? That bit of risk has certainly abated. Second risk for a potential markdown, that risk we have already seen over the last 15-18 months. And hence, that extent of risk also is relatively lower in the current portfolios. Third, and this I'm talking from a larger industry perspective, the prospect to hoard liquidity or create much more liquidity if my redemptions were to go berserk, that risk has also receded to see the intervention and of the regulators and the modalities worked out. And hence there is an availability, there are avenues which have been created to access that liquidity. So the two risks which a fixed income instrument goes through, cost of money and availability of money, largely both these things are getting addressed through the recent measures by both the regulators.
All right, that's great news. That's good news, actually. Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. Thank you for joining us.